Thank you very much for the opportunity to present today at today's symposium. My name is Dr. James Watterson. I have pre-recorded this several days in advance in the off chance that I'm unable to liberate myself from the operating room. So today I've been asked to speak about Competence Committee workflows, and I'm happy to present some of our workflows in the Department of Surgery. Christine Seabrook, who is the Education Project and Office Director of the Office of Education, and I work very, very closely and have developed and helped to guide these processes and workflows in the Department of Surgery over the past number of years. Just a little bit about me. I've been involved in the world of CBD for a number of years, dating back to my time as Program Director for Urology. Since 2018, I've been the Vice Chair of Education and have led the onboarding of all of our surgical programs in the Department of Surgery. We had a sort of a structured strategy for CBD implementation where all of our processes were standardized. We had an onboarding team, and we continue to support our programs with ongoing faculty development, as well as redefining and revisiting and revising all of these processes, looking towards optimal workflows and best practices. Our approach to CBD has been put together into an actual manual that is available for anyone for review. So CBD day-to-day, really this is what it amounts to. Again, there are various roles and players in the world of CBD. I think this is all pretty self-explanatory now. This is a slide that Christine and I put together several years ago, thinking about what is required for success in CBD for a resident to achieve their competencies and to be promoted, along with successful program accreditation. So again, standardized approach and process of implementation, curated resources, support from administration, program collaboration, sharing of best practices, engaged faculty, program directors, CBME leads, a functional e-portfolio, an engaged and functioning Competence Committee, and the resident itself having been engaged. This just represents the overview, which I think people are aware of now, that there is a flow to a resident assessment from academic coaches to CC members, and then finally the CC committee. Report is then sent back to the RPC for review and ratification, and any curricular changes that need to be looked at and revised or reviewed are done so by the RPC. So when we started out in CBD many moons ago, and we were asked to start to implement these processes, there wasn't a whole lot of practical experience. So in particular with the Competence Committees, again, these are some of the thoughts that sort of go through your head. First of all, who's in charge here and what's the process? And then for the individual members, like, how do I present my findings? So that was sort of the approach that we took, really to try to outline and structure the workflows and make it really practical for individual members, hopefully to learn and to put into place. With any Competence Committee, there is a number of different stages of a Competence Committee, and there is work to be done prior to a Competence Committee meeting, generally several weeks out prior to a meeting is when there typically is sort of an amalgamation and bringing together all of the documentation and assessment data, usually by the program administrator. We'll talk a little bit more about this later. There's obviously work to be done by the primary reviewers in reviewing a resident's portfolio, both in Elantra and outside of Elantra. At the Competence Committee meeting, obviously there's typically a robust discussion and capturing of that data and of that discussion. And post CC, there are obviously follow-up meeting at the RPC in order to ratify the recommendations made by the Competence Committee for resident progress. And then finally, obviously, there's a communication piece that's required to ensure that the residents themselves are notified of their progress and notify them of any individual changes or areas to work on. So each resident assessment by the Competency Committee really consists of a number of program-specific metrics. Obviously, with EPAs and milestones in Elantra, there is a review and a necessary review by the primary reviewers of each of the Competency Committee to really sort of look at how they're doing in the world of CBD. But these EPAs and milestones are really not the only metrics that a program typically looks at. So that will be up to the individual programs to really sort of decide and determine which are the program-specific metrics that need to be looked at as well. Whether they're multi-source feedbacks, whether they're various sort of procedural, surgical assessments, whether they're in-training exams, etc. So that will be up to the individual RPCs and competency committees really to look at and to set the metrics by which a resident's progress is evaluated. Our initial workflow really was extremely cumbersome. It was a set of spreadsheets that were really sort of, populated. Assessment of a resident in Elantra initially was extremely onerous and really sort of amounted to an accounting type of exercise where simply EPA assessments and attempts were really just sort of tallied. And that was simply because, again, there wasn't really the functionality that we now have in Elantra was not present back when we started a number of years ago. So over time, there's been constant tweaking of our processes in the Department of Surgery for our competency committees. And again, over the last 6 months, we've gone through another significant overhaul, really with a desire to improve and to continually make the process more practical, more facile, more efficient. So again, these processes were updated and have been updated. It's amounted to a reduction of duplication. I think we've improved efficiencies for both primary reviewers, the program administrators, the actual workflow and process that happens at the competency committee, and then also filling out and completing the reports that are required for the RPC. We are capitalizing on some of the enhancements of the Elantra ePortfolio with novel visualization dashboard enhancements, and we feel that this does provide a more robust review of resident performance. These have also been supported by some of enhancements for CBD in the Department of Surgery, where we've developed some fillable forms, some video walkthroughs in which I can share with you, and we'll have links to for anyone who's interested. As stated, there are these enhancements in Elantra with improvements in visualization dashboards for both resident assessment, and we're now setting our sights on improving and developing a faculty evaluation and program evaluation process in order to provide faculty and programs respectively their own feedback for improvement. We are stating and standardizing some EPA standards in the Department of Surgery, and again, there'll be some discussion about that a little bit later. So EPA standards, what we found along the way is that it's really challenging to assess a resident when there really haven't been enough assessments. So even though the residents are really sort of the driving force behind the acquisition of EPA standards, and this is adult learning, there definitely needs to be these standards, I think, imposed. And without them, I think we feel that the residents and staff, for that matter, who are part of the whole process, they just don't get done nearly enough in order to allow for a real sort of comprehensive review. So setting standards, I think, in your program is beneficial, and this is certainly supported by within, the Ottawa, within Ottawa and the University of Ottawa, as well as outside. Have had a number of meetings with other CC chairs at different webinars, and I think this is sort of the standard that people are going to. So whether it's an EPA a day, we feel that if residents can achieve 3 EPAs per week or 12 per rotation, then that does provide us with a fair amount of data to look at for each of the residents at their time of assessment by the CC committee. This does ensure engagement of the resident and program in CBD, and again does facilitate the overview of the resident progress at the Competence Committee. I think it's important for each program to sort of reflect on the stage-specific EPAs and really to provide some guidelines as to completion or expected completion. Again, without this, we feel that the residents are not necessarily looking towards the future and ensuring that they're having timely completion of their EPAs so that they can be successful in stage promotion. So again, I think it's up to the individual programs to really sort of reflect on when their specific EPAs should be completed. So what happens during the actual meeting? Again, just broadly speaking, we want to obviously have the findings and the review presented at the Competence Committee. There needs to be a completion of the CC report to the RPC. There can be the taking of minutes, whether they're separate or whether they're included into the CC report will be up to the individual CCs to decide upon. And lastly, obviously, there's got to be an update in signing off of the various EPAs that have been achieved in Elantra. So there is a division of duties. How we've sort of divided up the duties, and again, I'm speaking more from my role as CC chair for urology, and sort of using that as a bit of a framework for our other programs in surgery. How I view my role as CC chair is I'm responsible for chairing the meeting, so setting the agenda along with the program director, really looking at the schedule as to timeliness of when residents should be reviewed, and I think that's up to the individual programs. Residents have to be reviewed at a minimum of twice per year, but I think again, the actual schedule or calendar of meetings will be highly program specific, and obviously trying to ensure that the meetings run smoothly and as efficiently as possible. I also sort of view my role as responsible for overseeing the completion of the CC report to the RPC. Again, I don't think it's really optimal for the program administrators to be filling out these reports afterwards, just because again the discussion points are going to be lost. And similarly, I think that again, as per Royal College accreditation, program directors really should not be the CC chairs, and therefore it shouldn't fall to a program director to be filling out these forms afterwards as well. In urology, again, our program director, Dr. Matt Roberts, really helps the CC chair guide the resident review, and also in Elantra, responsible for checking off the completed EPAs. So there's a lot of cross-referencing that happens in real time in the urology CC. Each primary reviewer in urology, we have 6 committee members, and each reviewer is responsible for presenting and summarizing a number of residents, depending on the schedule, to the Competence Committee, and responsible for basically reviewing all of the EPA and non-EPA or secondary metrics data and presenting them at the committee meeting. Program administrator plays, again, a very important, crucial role in assisting the CC chair and program director in setting the agenda. Also, again, in some committees, responsible for recording minutes. In urology, again, we've developed a process where, and I'll speak to it a little bit in a few slides, where our CC form really sort of follows the process. So it starts with the program administrator, then is picked up by the primary reviewers, and then lastly, that same form is completed in real time at the Competency Committee meeting by the CC chair. The program administrator is also responsible for compiling the data pre-meeting in our sort of secondary metric spreadsheet. So basically pulling together all of those data points so that they're available and ready for review by the primary reviewer. Emailing out assignments to the CC reviewers, and again, with our new sort of fillable PDF form that follows the process. It starts with the program administrator, who fills out the first initial part of the form, which really sort of brings forward the last recommendations made at the last CC meeting, and to start the process. So our process basically starts from the program administrator. We have a standardized email that is sent out to all primary reviewers, to the various programs in the Department of Surgery. And again, basically it's a standardized email, but has links to the individual resident portfolios, so that the primary reviewer can basically click, and that would bring them to the compilation of secondary metrics. For those that need a little bit of ongoing support, again, there are links directly to Elantra as well. I've alluded to it before, so we devised a new report, basically it's Competency Committee Resident Status Report, that is a fillable PDF file that starts with bringing forward the recommendations from the last CC meeting so that the primary reviewer has a starting point, and then basically a number of different areas that need to be filled out, both EPA and non-EPA data. That form is then sent back to be readied for the Competency Committee, whereby it's reopened at the Competency Committee and reviewed and presented by the primary reviewer, and lastly filled out in real time by the Competency Committee chair in order to complete the form and ready it for the RPC several weeks post-CC meeting. So that primary review happens on this form. There are new enhancements in the visualization dashboards that allow the primary reviewer to go through. It can be quite cumbersome and a little bit onerous and a little bit scary for primary reviewers to navigate through Elantra, and as such, we've developed a number of different resources, including some video walkthroughs that really are sort of a step-by-step process and walkthrough in Elantra to help guide primary reviewers. And that process is also reflected in the form that we've created with actual directives embedded within the form to help guide that process. And I would have to say that our committee members in urology are getting really familiarized with this process. Again, there are a number of different enhancements, including normative graphs and so forth. So it really is helpful for the primary reviewers to have an in-depth knowledge of Elantra. And this is, again, where we've spent some time in looking at faculty development with such video walkthroughs, development of this fillable form with specific directives and guidelines, basically, and guides to help the primary reviewers navigate Elantra. Ultimately, the Competency Committee needs to develop a report, which is a high-stakes document. It's utilized to assist the RPC in the decision-making of resident progress. Obviously, the CC makes recommendations, but it's ultimately up to the RPC to review and ratify that decision. It does, this report, obviously, it's an opportunity to provide constructive criticism and obviously flag any issues that may arise. I think it's important to state that many of our residents have been put off trajectory for a variety of different reasons. Most times it's because of inadequate number of EPAs and hence the desire to implement standards. But it's not unusual, and to help guide that process. And so becoming more comfortable with putting residents off trajectory. And if a resident's off trajectory, that may then prompt a subsequent meeting with the program director to sort of discuss the report. And in rare circumstances, there are needs for creation of individual learning plans or IEPs. And certainly the residents do appreciate the process and dedicated sort of feedback. And I don't think they truly understand sort of what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm certainly a big proponent of showing residents and demonstrating to residents that process, and showing them the dashboards, and gives them, again, I think a fuller appreciation of the actual work that's being done, and the sort of the review of their progress and the commitment by the program to resident success. Following the meeting, there are obviously a number of different tasks that are required. So again, the CC chair or program administrator basically will take those CC reports and will make them ready for the subsequent discussion at the RPC. Again, if residents are on trajectory, these are very, very quick sort of updates at the RPC. The individual forms are housed in Elantra and can be uploaded into Elantra through the log meeting tab. So that's where we basically house all these documents. The program director is really responsible for arranging any follow-up resident meetings, especially for residents that are off trajectory or not progressing as expected. And again, ultimately, these CC reports are presented at the RPC by the CC chair. So again, just some practical tips for CCs moving forward. For us, we found that, again, having that administrative support is crucial. While we were starting out, we were supporting each CC meeting for the various programs with two members of the Office of Education. One who's a program administrator, and Christine was really sort of there guiding workflows as the content expert, and helping to navigate and helping to ensure that there was an adherence to the process. And that's required ongoing sort of management. I think it's important that, if you haven't launched yet, that thinking about the structure, function, and processes, and even doing sort of dry run meetings is helpful. It's important for the primary reviewers to do the review in a timely manner. I think that, again, I know that we're all extremely busy, but a commitment to the process and doing this the week before, leading up to the meeting, is extremely helpful. Emailing your findings to the program administrator an hour before the CC meeting is really not a good way of carrying out our business. I spoke about it earlier about EPA completion and setting standards to help sort of guide the residents and faculty, and sort of setting the expectations on both sides as to what's required. And also, again, setting EPA completion guidelines for each individual stage of CBD. CC workflow is really one of the biggest things, and again, it will require ongoing investment of time and learning by the CC members, And this is, again, where we've really focused our attention in trying to help shorten that learning curve by providing a number of different resources and video walkthroughs, and really doing the heavy lifting in sort of urology that can then be passed on to the other programs. The CC lead, again, is responsible for completion of those RPC reports. And again, it's not up to the program director. And again, that's an accreditation standard. So just to reflect again, I feel that the requirements of the of composite committees really is, requires, again, leadership, typically, again, by the CC chair, but also the program director. I think that, again, typically they work hand in hand. There needs to be that engagement and dedicated time by the primary reviewers. So that can sometimes be challenging. But again, I think that, trying to find those individuals within your various programs that have, basically a sort of a desire to be involved in the process and who are engaged in that educational realm, I think is key. We have dedicated membership because, again, the processes continue to evolve. Having that steady membership does allow the primary reviewers to attain the skill set that's required in order to do these reviews. And again, establishing those workflows, I think, is crucial. So just to sort of end this out, there are a variety of different resources that I've pulled for the various members of the audience. I draw attention to the updated Program Director's Handbook, which is, I think, a very important document. It's written by educators nationally, really to help guide the new program directors. So if there are any new program directors or CC leads out there, there are a variety of different chapters that are helpful. I was involved in a couple of chapters. So getting started as a new program director, Christine, myself, and Dr. Vern Nake wrote this chapter. And then also implementation of CBD and CanMeds into your curriculum was also written by myself, Christine, and Vern. So please check it out. Our own Office of Education's CBD manual has been published to iBooks. So if people are looking to, sort of figure out some of these different processes, the manual is there for people's review. The Office of Education has social media areas to basically look at as well. A lot of the videos that I've alluded to have been uploaded to our YouTube channel, so feel free to check those out as well. And again, some of these videos include a recent webinar by Dr. Warren Chung, who's the Vice Chair of Education for Emergency Medicine, and myself, where we talked again about these processes and how to set up competency committees. And then lastly, again, on our YouTube channel, there are these video walkthroughs. So there is a walkthrough of a primary review of a resident in Elantra, which basically will take you step by step through Elantra in terms of which buttons to click, what to look at, and again, that walkthrough mirrors our flow through our fillable form. So they're meant to sort of basically work together.
Yep. Okay.
And then last
Here. Okay, perfect. So this is the new form.
There is a video walkthrough of how to
in
present
real time.
a resident at a COMPS.
I'm going to say the form is pretty slick in terms of the fillable part of it.
How to
just a minor amount of effort on our end to try to get the rest to go through.
To be succinct,
overall, Kale's doing quite well.
Review the
He
data that's
has,
required.
at our previous CC report, we had determined progressing as expected.
That concludes my talk.
He had completed
I'm
his
at
TTD
29
assessments.
minutes.
He's been on a few rotations since,
again,
not a whole lot of
I think,
urology
Christine is
time.
on the line as
But
well.
that being said,
so I'm happy to take any questions.
he
at this
does
time.
appear to be getting the required number of EPA observations while on rotation, at least. He is progressing as expected normatively in terms of the rest of the people in his year. He has, with the time that he's had on urology in this last period, he's been able to pick up a number of foundation EPAs and even to achieve a couple of the sorry.
That's all right.
He's been able to achieve a couple of the foundation's EPAs as well, and the ones that are in progress. A few are quite well in progress, if not almost completely achieved. So he's doing quite well. Good variety of assessors. He's even kind of proactively taken a few out of core as well and started to get a few of these low-hanging fruits that
Nice.
can PEDS rotations. So yeah, he's clearly, you know, when you see a resident of his level starting to pick up already into core, the guy's clearly paying attention to the CBD process. So that's very encouraging. The e-portfolio, his IDERs are from a variety of assessors. Most of the ones that I was able to review were from emergency medicine. No real difficulties were identified throughout. Consistently very good. From an exam point of view, his in-service evaluation was 38% overall for a 25th percentile overall score. I feel that gets him a slightly behind score for being in the bottom quarter of exam takers in his year. Certainly correctable, but he just needs to read a bit more. In terms of the cases logged, he's doing well. About 50 cases already that he's put in, so he is staying on top of the reporting. So that, and there's no Pulse 360 PD report just yet. So I feel that Kale is continuing to do quite well. I think it's fair to give him. Well, we can discuss as a committee here. I didn't fill out the last portion of I'm not sure if I was supposed to do the last 2 pages, but yeah, I mean, he's on trajectory. He's clearly taking the EPA process with some degree of seriousness, and he's clearly looking for EPAs to do. So that's good. He does need to read a bit, and somebody should kind of poke him, I think, about that ISE score. But outside of that, I'm quite pleased with the.
Perfect.
That's a sweet report, Conrad. Nice and tight.
Progress as expected.
I have to admit, this reporting template makes so much more sense to me compared to what we were doing before. This is a much more fruitful exercise, and I think that, I mean, obviously it's a more comprehensive, review of the resident and everything else that they're doing, but it also gives us the opportunity to present that in a nice, concise summary. And this is, short answer, this is just better than what we were doing before.